Arsenal 2, Manchester United 3 as Michael Carrick secures back-to-back wins as manager of Manchester United with another fantastic performance. Another performance where United were the better team and deserved all 3 points. Now, as a United fan, it's a little bit difficult not to get carried away, but let's start off by being honest about this game. Arsenal did start the match the better team. Arsenal were the team knocking the ball about and United couldn't really get close, but I felt that United were very plucky defensively. I thought the intensity, the work rate was good throughout the game, but early on we had a bit of a tactical problem. And the problem was when we were trying to press in our shape that we saw at times last week, which was that 4-4-2, which could occasionally split to a diamond. And of course, last week we put that big focus on Bruno Fernandes and Mbeumo covering a lot of ground and trying to screen passes into midfield. The problem was Arsenal were sort of prepared for this. So what they did was they split their 2 centre-backs really wide. This is what they've done throughout the first half. So Gabriel on one side, Saliba on the other. And all this does, it doesn't change the roles and the responsibilities of Mbeumo and Bruno. But what it does do is it really changes the distances that they've got to cover, especially when there's Rice and Zubamendi behind them, 2 Arsenal players behind them. So if the centre-back's really, really wide, either Zubamendi or Rice could drop in here. Kobbie couldn't always follow them because he's got another midfielder to pick up, and that's why Arsenal at times could sort of pop the ball around the corner, and in the first half, they did find it relatively easy to play through the Manchester United pressure, and they certainly started the game on top and were asking questions of United. Now, a lot of those questions that Arsenal were asking came when United were in that very familiar 4-4-2 mid-block that we saw last week against Manchester City. And again, it was very effective from Manchester United. It closed the gaps really well. But the thing that impressed me the most is that it was always aggressive. You can be cautious defensively. You can get numbers behind the ball. But I will always feel it's important that there's going to be some pressure on the ball. You can't let these Arsenal players have the ball for 90 minutes long unchallenged. If not, they're experienced players. They're going to relax. They're going to play calmly and eventually find their way through. Importantly, from minute 1, literally here, 1 minute 38 into the game, Manchester United are trying to be aggressive from the block, but it continued throughout the match. Here is minute 94:38, and Manchester United in the block are still trying to get pressure on the ball. And just immediately for me, that's very, very important. Yes, we were defensive for large parts of the game, like we saw last week, but we were trying to be aggressive from within that defensive shape. The wingers weren't dropping back into the back 6 the second Arsenal got the ball. If there were moments where we could try and steal a little bit higher, we tried to do that. I mean, we literally saw that for the first goal. That's because United are willing to go and put pressure on the ball. And for me, in terms of mindset, that's very, very important. Now, the other thing that was quite familiar and quite similar to what we saw last week was the fact that United did a very good job of condensing the middle of the pitch with, again, a very narrow 4-4-2 shape. And we know that Arsenal, truly at the best of times, they don't like to go play in the middle of the pitch as much as what Manchester City do. And that was something that I was a little bit worried about coming into the game. Last week, it felt like we trapped City out wide. Arsenal want to play in the wide zones, so I was a little bit worried about how that would work. But largely, Manchester United got it pretty spot on with the wide rotations defensively. So starting off down this side, Bukayo Saka, I think is one of the best young right wingers in the world. I think he's a very good player. He didn't have his best game, and that's largely because United defended so well. And because Luke Shaw was able, particularly in the second half, to go and be really aggressive up against Bukayo Saka and sort of stop him before he could really get into his motion. Saka's a fantastic footballer, so of course there were times where he carried a threat, but largely Shaw was able to go out and engage. And the reason why he was able to do that was because Patrick Dorgu was doing these amazing defensive shifts down the left side, where he's covering back in fullback behind Luke Shaw, and covering runs from players like Odegaard, Jurrien Timber, Ben White when he came on as well. So Dorgu individually as a defender may not have had his greatest game, but the role that he was playing was still very important to make sure that United always had the extra number in the box. So no matter how many players Arsenal threw forward and throughout the game, United still had that extra player because Dorgu was just willing to tuck in. It wasn't outright a back 5 because we started higher, we started aggressive, but when we needed to, we could collapse that a little bit deeper. And we saw something similar on the other side of the pitch as well, just in a slightly different fashion. And the reason for that was because we were scared of Maguire getting dragged out. So now it'd be Dalot going aggressive towards the ball, and then Casemiro could often just fill in behind him, help him out and give United that extra defender. So anytime there was an Arsenal runner, they didn't really have anywhere to go. And I don't know about you guys, I watched that game and at no point did I think Arsenal were going to score. Like, the first one is an error from probably Patrick Dorgu, and then definitely Lisandro Martinez. Really bad defending. And then the second goal is just the scrappiest corner that you will ever see. It's barely football. Outside of that, in open play, Arsenal did not offer anything. Now, you can probably hear in my voice that I was celebrating quite a lot during this game. If you want to continue with the celebrations, subscribing to the channel would just be amazing. Last week, we absolutely smashed the subscriber goal. I mean, 95k is the next target. So if you could subscribe, if you do like the content, it would mean so much to me, and it would make a Manchester United fan even happier. So yeah, please press subscribe. So now it's time to talk about Manchester United on the ball, and these spells were very, very important, particularly in the first half, because Arsenal were the team in the first half on top. Arsenal were the team playing out from the back and moving forward like we saw. They struggled to break United down, but the pressure was always there, and for United that's very difficult. You know, the guys in the black shirts were doing a lot of running off the ball, a lot of tracking back into their own defensive third, a lot of tracking back to their own byline, a lot of putting tackles in and battling for seconds and things like that, and that's exhausting. Physically, it takes a lot out of you, but also mentally it does as well. So what you've got to do is when you get the ball, you've got to take that moment to look after it. So for the first 20 minutes or so, we probably didn't do that enough. But eventually, the ball just settled, and the Manchester United players just settled. Sometimes you've got to weather the storm in the first part of the game. It sort of goes past tactics a little bit. You just got to survive away from home for a spell, and I thought United did that. But then once we got the ball down and we got into our shape, I thought we were very composed, very calm, and I loved that the United players wanted to play with the ball. Of course, in the second half, we were a bit more direct with the goal kicks, but during that middle spell of the game, the 30th through to probably the 70th, I loved how United wanted the ball. And I think we did something very clever. I think Michael Carrick did something very clever. So Diogo Dalot pushed a little bit further forward down the right-hand side, and Maguire moved to right centre-back, which we don't normally see. Lisandro Martinez went in the middle, and Luke Shaw played as the left-sided centre-back. Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro then made up the double pivot, and Bruno Fernandes and Ahmad sort of played in these half spaces, with Mbeumo always willing to drop in as well. And we can see that here. We can see that sort of shape. But the really important thing for me here is that Lisandro Martinez is the middle centre-back, because that is pure technical ability. He actually attempted more passes than any other Manchester United player throughout this entire match. And if you're going to have a player trying to attempt a lot of passes, it's probably best to have probably our most technical player at the football club playing the volume of those passes. And it's Lisandro Martinez's ability to be calm, to be composed under pressure. So when Arsenal were trying to get, around us, they started the game fast, they were trying to put us under pressure. Having Lisandro Martinez, who was just taking extra touches and almost taking the mick at Jesus, was really, really useful. But then from a tactical point of view, it's his ability to punch through the line. Arsenal have one of the best mid-blocks in football. They are so good in their defensive structure, 4-4-2, off the ball, sometimes shifting to a diamond. They are so compact defensively. They are absolutely fantastic. But having Lisandro Martinez on the ball with that little bit of time was a stroke of genius from Michael Carrick, because he was just able to slide those passes through the lines. A few occasions where he's breaking through the Arsenal midfield and getting the ball to our close proximity forwards. And I mean, for this rather special goal, it was actually started by Lisandro Martinez, finding that ball into the feet of Patrick Dorgu, who sort of did the rest. So United didn't have loads of the ball in the game. It was only 43% possession for United. But I think this, when we did get the ball, the attitude of the players was fantastic. I think Kobbie Mainoo's technical ability, again in this game, was really important. Those moments where he just takes a touch, and it looks like slow football, and sometimes it is, but it's just sort of giving United that breather. He's giving us that moment of calm. Last week, we saw a Manchester United team that blitzed Manchester City on the counter-attack. This game was a little bit different. It was United trying to get on the ball, trying to look after the ball, trying to keep it in these tight spaces. And I think that Lisandro Martinez in particular deserves so much credit for the way that he played. And I think Michael Carrick deserves a lot of credit for getting him into that position, getting him into that role, and then giving these players ahead of them that close proximity. I mean, we've spoke about it so many times on the channel. I'm always of the opinion, if you can get good footballers really close to each other, they're going to do special things. And I mean, Kobbie Mainoo, late on in the game, that little bit of quality on Declan Rice to set up the goal is just incredible. But it's there because these players are given the license to get close, they're given the license to express themselves, but also because there is that desire to move the ball through the middle and find those guys. Now, the final point I want to touch on is just the fact that Manchester United did not give Arsenal a second's rest in this game. And this is something that we will probably cover a little bit more during the week, so get your notifications on so you don't miss when that video comes out. There's going to be lots of videos on this game once again because there's so much to talk about. But I thought that one of the things we did very well was we just didn't give Arsenal a second. Gabriel and Saliba are two fantastic centre-backs, but they looked really unsettled. They looked rattled really throughout the game because United were just constantly chasing them. We saw Patrick Dorgu in the second half almost playing as a target man on the left wing, but he did an absolutely fantastic job. We've got Mbumo here putting them under pressure and rattling those Arsenal centre-backs. And what it did for United was it always gave us that opportunity to get up the pitch. And if you can sort of make a defender uncomfortable on the first ball, chances are their clearance isn't going to be quite as good. And that's when you can scrap around on that second ball. And again, what Carrick does is he gets his players really close together, so they can fight together. They can literally go to war with these very physical Arsenal players, but also they can combine together. They can be technical together. And I think, again, that was great. I think Carrick really asked a lot of questions of the Arsenal defence constantly. Sesko for the final goal is really important. It's a little bit of hold-up work that he does here, but importantly, you then got the likes of Kobbie Mainoo on that second ball. It helps, of course, when Manchester United score two ridiculously good goals, like absolutely out of this world, but the environment is put in place for them to do that. You buy a bit of luck in football, right? You might say the Cunha and Dorgu goals are sort of, you know, 1 in a million things. They're individual quality, but the manager, Michael Carrick, has given the players the platform to show that individual quality. There's been a belief for a long time that these United players aren't good enough, but they've shown in this game and also last weekend, and Carrick has given the license to show that they are good enough, that they're actually fantastic footballers when you let them play, when you let them express themselves, when you let them play to their strengths. And I just think they did that fantastically. Again, we'll cover it in a bit more depth as the week goes on, but I think it's very important to talk about the psychological effect of letting these guys express themselves and just constantly just annoying that Arsenal defence. Those Arsenal defenders would have had a rugged day at work today because they were constantly put under pressure. Every single ball was challenged, and the Arsenal defenders did not have an answer to the Manchester United questions. So yeah, for me, that is sort of the basics of how Manchester United got this result and absolutely deserved to do so. There was a couple of worrying things defensively, particularly for the first 20 minutes, but once United settled, I thought we looked great. Very, very compact. And again, Arsenal never looked like scoring. I know they got 2 goals, so it's weird to say, but I never thought Arsenal were going to cause a big problem. I never thought they were going to really threaten our back line because we defended so well, so compactly. Again, the players were fantastic. The shift that they put in, but also the defensive structure. Not too big of spaces for the players to deal with. They're nice and close to each other. Kobbie and Casemiro haven't got too much ground to cover because they've got support. They're close to each other, and that really platforms us defensively. And if you can play well defensively, which Carrick has done in the past 2 games, he's really snuffed out City and Arsenal, which is fantastic. If you can play well defensively in the Premier League, you're going to give yourself a pretty good platform. You're going to give yourself a chance in any football match in the world, really. To then have the quality that we've got on the ball. You know, we bring Cunha and Sesko on from the bench. That's elite quality. But we started with Kobbie Mainoo, Bruno Fernandes, Mbumo, Ahmad, and then Patrick Dorgu as well with an absolute screamer. You know, if you can defend well, you're always going to get that chance on the ball. And I think Michael Carrick has done something very clever again in this game by getting those good players close to each other, let them express themselves, let them combine, let them be Manchester United players, let them take responsibility, let them solve their own problems on the pitch, let them make their moments. And yeah, they made their moments, and it was very, very enjoyable, and it was just an amazing game of football. Like I said, there will be plenty more videos later this week covering everything from this game. Let me know what you would like to see. Would you like to see a more in-depth breakdown on the defense, a more in-depth breakdown on the attack, any players' performances that you want me to cover? Let me know in the comments, because I am more than happy to talk about this game and last week's game until the end of time. For today, though, this particular video, we are now finished. So thank you guys very much for watching this one. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe, and get your notifications on. And as always, I will see you in the next one.